Yeah, buzz of YouTube. What's up, all you UCL fans out there? SixftHax here, bringing you guys the power rankings for week number 5 of UCL season 3. Of course, if you guys are excited for this, make sure to show off your support, hammer arm that thumbs up button down below. Now, this should be going up on Tuesday as opposed to Monday when I typically like to get these up. Main reason being is that Monday, my P4G finals match against Joey Pokey was uploaded, so I kind of want to leave Monday to that finals match, and I figured that I'll just push this back a day instead of trying to get the finals match up like 2 days afterwards. It was originally supposed to go up. So yeah, I hope you guys don't mind. Should be back on Mondays though with the power rankings. Also, for those of you who do not know and who may have a Discord account, there is actually a UCL Discord. I keep forgetting to mention it in the video, and hopefully you guys that are watching this, if you're interested in that, then definitely go check that out. It will be linked down in the description, as well as a link to all the coaches of the UCL and a link to the UCL Twitter along with the UCL Reddit, where you guys can kind of post stuff there, talk about the UCL season and whatnot. So yeah, check out all the little social media things. Those will be down below. So with that being said, before we jump right into this, make sure to let me know in the comment section below what is your own power ranking for this week and what was your favorite match of week 5. I think my match, or my favorite match, was probably Twit versus Mo to an extent, mainly because of the end game and just how it went, and I'll touch on that more when I talk about Twit and Mo in the power ranking. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this started. At number 8 here we have, of course, Jay, Mr. J, YouTube gamer, coach of the Carolina Keldios. Now, I have really been enjoying the fact that Jay has seemed more confident as of lately. I think I pointed this out last week, where he kind of finally started like making a game plan. It's kind of obvious to see that he has more confidence compared to the first like 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And of course, this match against Shady was super hacksy, to say the least. There was so many hurricane misses. There was confusions. There was a thunder wave miss that actually really hurt him. Honestly, it was actually really good for Shady that he missed thunder wave, but I'll touch on that when I talk about Shady and his placements this week. But yeah, it was just a super hacksy battle. I think in the end it might have kind of evened out, because some of the hurricanes that Tornadoes missed, they weren't necessarily that important. Like, Hurricane is already going to be doing 0 to Cresselia, so those misses on Cresselia really didn't matter, because I'm pretty sure he went for like 1 or 2 hurricanes as Jay tried to moonlight off the damage. So unless he had got a confusion, then those hurricane misses didn't matter. And it's only about like I think it's only about like a 20% chance to confusion. So those hurricane misses weren't that important. I know he hurricane confused the Garchomp and it hit itself in its confusion, so that's a poorly trained Garchomp on Jay's part, because you have to train your Pokemon in the mountains. It does kind of suck at times to see hacks like that happen, and in the end I don't think it affected too much. Like Jay, I also like the fact that he's trying to set his game plans into motion. He's trying to find decent times to bring in mons to set up, but much like last time, he really kind of jumped the gun with Slurpuff, because Shady still had the Cloyster in the back, and unless Shady had gone for a Hurricane and missed, then I don't think the Slurpuff would have been able to sweep regardless, because a Hurricane still does a lot of damage. And Shady ended up going for the Shattered Psyche, which put Jay low enough to the point where after Belly Drum he was easy pickings for the Cloyster. So I feel like he needs to kind of take more things into consideration when it comes to him trying to find perfect opportunities to try and set up. He's been bringing SD Mega Beedrill a lot too, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever seen SD Beedrill brought as many times as Jay has brought it within the first few weeks of the UCL, so that's kind of cool to see. Unfortunately though, he doesn't really find too many opportunities to try to get that off as well. Not to mention that Rocks would have been absolutely amazing in this match, because basically for the whole game, Tornadus and Incineroar were just able to come in for free without little to no drawback whatsoever, and it was very evident in the match that Jay was struggling with that. If he had been able to get up Rocks sooner, in the game. I don't remember if Shady had defog or not, but if he didn't, then those rocks would have been tremendous against the Incineroar and the Tornadus, as well as just chipping down the rest of Shady's team, because he also had Cloyster, he had Megalodios as well, which don't appreciate taking that chip damage, and it forces Megalodios to recover a little bit sooner. So Jay again does not pull out a victory, but I think he's been doing very, very well when it comes to him having more faith in his prep and more faith in the plays he makes in general. Moving on to our 7th team here, we have Hi, I am Twit, aka that dude with the afro, though the coolest kid with the afro on the block in the canyons with Greninjas roaming around. And then that is Twit, coach of the Grand Canyon Greninjas. So, oh man, that endgame between Twit and Mo was very, very sloppy. It was very sloppy on both ends, to say the least, I suppose. And I'll talk about Mo's end when I talk about him in the rankings later in the video. But Twit really showed in this match that he still has that flaw of not being able to kind of pull it out at the end. He still gets in the habit of dropping the ball in the last, like, final half, last third of the battle, and this was a great example of that match, because he let his Rhydon go down when I think Mo only had the Mew and the Zardex in the back, after Mo had needlessly sacked off Nidoking. So at that point, if Twit had been able to tell that Rhydon single-handedly beat Zardex, he could have potentially saved Rhydon. And I think between Scizor and Kyurem Black, those two would have been able to handle Mo's Mew, because they also didn't let Zardex come in for free. Scizor threatened U-turn, and if Twit U-turned out as Zardex came in, that's chip damage on Zardex, and Rhydon just comes back in. So that would have been really good for Twit. And then Kyurem Black just absolutely nukes Zardex on the switch in, so Mew would have been forced to stay in. And speaking of Kyurem, I like the fact that he did bring the Icium Z Kyurem. When Mo brought in Nidoking on the Celebi, and Twit decided to stay in, that was not really a good play. I think he also still had the Necrozma in the back. But my point is that if a Nidoking ever comes in on a Celebi, you either need to expect him to be a Shucka Berry set or a Psychic Weakening Berry to guarantee live one hit from Celebi, or they're Assault Vested, or in Mo's case, it was Scarfed. So I understand if he wanted to leave in Celebi just to find out what item Nidoking was, but if he still had Necrozma in the back, or just something to switch into any type of like poison type move in general, or a fire type move, or even like a Mega Horn or something, I definitely think he should have taken that chance, because once Celebi went down, he lost a giant nuisance to Mo's team. I think it was Subseed Celebi, if I'm not mistaken. If he had been able to keep that, it would have beat Milotic 1v1. He would have been able to sub Leech Seed on the Mew, potentially beating that 1v1, and then Celebi behind a substitute would have been absolutely annoying for Mo to try and break through, especially if he's still like spamming Leech Seeds, constantly being able to substitute. Even just like a recover Celebi in this match, I think would have been good enough for Twit to bring. Actually, the fact that he didn't have a reliable form of recovery also did kind of hurt him a little bit. But that play, I think, was just very, very odd. The Assault Vest Necrozma also seemed odd in my opinion, but I guess it kind of makes sense if he did want to bring it for the Nidoking, because Nidoking was kind of difficult for his team to try to switch into. So I can see why he potentially went down that route. But my biggest thing about this match is just how poorly he handled the end game, and that's kind of understandable. Like, typically there's not many games that will go past like the 30-minute mark or like the 40-minute mark. I think their match was almost like 50 minutes if I'm not mistaken. So once you get into like those final 30 or 20 minutes after you've already played for like 25-30 turns, those last couple turns of the match is where it's like a testament to how experienced the player is and how well they're able to maintain their stamina in the game, like mentally wise too, if they can still stay that focused. And that's where I think Twit again just kind of falls off, is that he can play the early game, mid game decently enough, not too bad to the point where it just kind of costs him the entire game, but it's really the end game that he still just needs to work on. And I feel like if he can work on that, polish it up a little bit, he will definitely be a a force to be reckoned with. So at number 6, we have Shady, coach of the New York Yankees. And of course, Shady and Jay had an absolutely hacksy battle. There's no denying that. How much it really mattered in the end, I'm not too sure. Just because if he had hit every single hurricane, you have to factor in the chances that he might have been able to crit, he might have been able to get the confusion, and all that shenanigery. And then the prep that Shady did bring this week was pretty decent, I think. I really like the fact that he had the dual status Latios. I don't like the fact, though, that he tried to Thunderwave Cresselia before he tried to Toxic it. Even if he did expect Jay to switch, I don't think you ever want to Thunderwave a Cresselia if you have the option to Toxic it. Like, even if you're gonna reveal it to your opponent, anytime Latios comes in, that forced the Cresselia to switch out if it starts Calm Minding up. And the fact that he missed that Thunderwave, I think, was actually really huge. Just because if he was not able to Toxic the Cresselia, it might have been a little bit more difficult for him to wear it down and essentially beat it 1v1. Also, the Incineroar, I don't like the fact that he had Darkest Lariat on Incineroar. I honestly think knockoff Incineroar would have been absolutely amazing this matchup, because being able to get rid of those items would have been tremendously helpful. I noticed that the Hitmontop was a little bit annoying for him to try and deal with, just because it could consistently switch into Incineroar, so it kind of just made Incineroar almost useless throughout the entire game. Thankfully, though, he was able to pull out the victory at the end. He made a really nice play with the Mega Latios, where he double Thunderwaved, if I'm not mistaken, and he was able to catch the incoming Mega Beedrill. That was a very brilliant play on Shady's part, and ultimately I think the Cloyster was able to just kind of was kind of able to just win the entire battle. Of course, Tornadus being blind was a little bit suckish. Yeah, not too much to say about Shady. I think he did play decently enough, but there's no denying that the hacks was super annoying on both ends. And he did use the Mega Latios very well this time around, and the Incineroar set was just kind of, it didn't really do much. Also, the lack of Jay being able to get up Stealth Rocks was tremendous for Shady, because he didn't have to worry about that extra chip damage and stuff on his Tornadus, which Tornadus was clearly just a massive problem for Jay to deal with. So moving on to our rank 6 team here, we have Nappy Boy 92, coach of the Tucson Terrakions, and this match right here kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. In the sense that it wasn't just because I did help Nappy prep, but it was because while I was watching the match, Nappy just made a lot of questionable plays, and it really kind of showed once the Hoopa got critted. But before that, he played his Crobat very poorly against the Registeel. The Crobat was specifically made to beat Registeel, and he didn't taunt it, when I think that if you're a taunt Crobat in front of a Registeel, you should always want to go for the taunt. You should never want to allow it to Thunder Wave or Toxic or get up rocks or anything like that. Even if it is a very obvious play to make, you're still taunting whatever switches in on the Crobat. And if you're able to cancel an option for your opponent, that is honestly really huge. I feel like he should have just been consistent with the taunting with Crobat in general. That definitely would have helped against the Registeel. And then I feel like he really misplayed also with the Hoopa by going for the Z Snatch. Hoopa behind a substitute is absolutely deadly, because if the substitute is not taken care of, there is no way that PK would have been able to stop that Hoopa. And I think that him Z snatching that early was very unnecessary, because I'm pretty positive that a second Drain Punch, or not second Drain Punch, well, second Drain Punch in general, but the first Drain Punch on the Scrafty, I think it would have been able to knock him out. If not, then it would have put him low enough to the point where he would have been knocked out by the Toxic. So I think the substitute still would have been broken, but Hoopa at that point would have gone 2 for 1 essentially, where it came in and it got 2 kills, and that's 2 less mons that Nappy has to worry about. And he might have also been able to save Hoopa for later in the match as death fodder potentially, or if he was able to knock out the Scrafty, he's still behind a substitute. That means PK needs to bring something in to deal with that Hoopa, while it's behind that substitute. And that in itself could have been very huge, because it could have allowed Nappy to potentially get another KO or actually go for the C snatch and not only get a KO but also be at +2 speed to still dent something in the back. Even if he wasn't able to KO something, just getting off a huge hit on whatever PK was forced to bring in would have been absolutely amazing for Nappy in this match. Unfortunately though, he did get crit, and it was very obvious that Nappy just kind of threw in the towel at that point, and he didn't really want to try anymore. And I get that feeling. I've had those games before too. But besides that, it was just the fact that after he got critted, things just kind of went downhill for Nappy. Hopefully he does bounce back next week though, and we will just have to see. So moving on to our number 4 team here, we got PK, coach of the Philadelphia for Alligators. Now, yes, the crit was very, very huge, but the main reason I decided to move PK above Nappy is not solely because of the crit, but it's the fact that PK just was able to maintain confidence and stay focused throughout the entire match, even when things weren't really going his way. Also, his prep is still very interesting, I want to say, to say the least, I suppose, because I do believe that PK's prep can be a little bit better, but it's almost always decent enough to the point where it helps him out. There's not really anything that hurts him entirely too much. The one thing though that I will question him on is when he left in Registeel on the Hoopa, and his first thought was to go for Thunderwave. Like, he immediately wanted to go for the Thunderwave. And I feel like when a Hoopa comes in on a Registeel, if you're not going to switch out, you want to ensure that it's not able to potentially set up for free. Even if you think it's going to knock you out, you never want to allow it to potentially substitute or nasty plot, or I guess Z boosting move, whichever one of the three. Because if he had gone for the Iron Head instead, he would have forced Nappy to potentially either consistently substitute or force Nappy to go for the Drain Punch, leaving Hoopa without a substitute intact, making it easier for PK to bring something in to potentially revenge kill the Hoopa. And that's just kind of like the one big misplay that I think PK did in this match. And then from there, I can't really judge how things went after PK had crit the Hoopa, just because he played the end game how he should have. He didn't really make many risky plays. He didn't need to make risky plays at that point, because again, like, Nappy just kind of threw in the towel. I think Nappy was just kind of playing on autopilot, where he really wasn't predicting too much. He didn't need to predict much because obviously he wasn't in it anymore. And then that's not to say anything against PK, because he was still in it. He was still making the plays he needed to make. He was still focusing. He was still trying to predict and do all that shenanigan. And again, that's kind of why I wanted to put PK above Nappy's, because PK was in this match the entire time, as where Nappy just kind of checked out halfway through. And again, I feel like that's just another testament to how your mindset is for battling wise, and I guess like how much experience you really have, because hacks is part of the game. People need to understand that. I get that you'll be upset if you get hacked. I still get upset at times when I get hacked, but at the end of the day, it's part of Pokemon, guys. You can't get that upset about it. It's going to be game changing at times. Other times it's not going to matter whatsoever. And then this match, this was where the hacks was possibly game changing, and this is where one person was just completely out of it after that, and it's just how the game goes sometimes. So I can't fault Nappy either, and there's no way I could punish PK for still playing out the game and still being involved in the battle as he was. So moving on to the third team on our power rankings, we have the heated Mo, coach of the Toronto Togekiss. I was gonna say the Tucson Togekiss. I don't know why. But yeah, we have Mo here at number 3. But this match, I think that Mo definitely felt defeated throughout the entire game. I think if you watch his side of the battle, it's kind of obvious to tell that his heart really isn't in the battle, and that's a little cliche to say, I guess, but he's not like fully there in the sense that he doesn't have that confidence that he normally typically has. Like Mo, I think for the most part has been confident in every single one of his matches, but this was the one game where his head wasn't fully there, his heart wasn't fully in it, and he was just kind of I don't want to say beating himself up, but he was just kind of putting himself down for the most part, because he thought that he was going to get washed, he thought that he was going to lose, and he thought that he was just going to get tossed essentially by Twit, because Twit's team is actually very, very scary. It's very scary in the sense that if Twit was a better prepper and a better player, I definitely think Twit would be positive right now. But that's where Mo, I think, kind of had the advantage. His prep was a little better, and his battling skills are a little bit more polished. Now, Mo did kind of also make some questionable plays throughout this match, but it was not until the end game where things really kind of went in his favor. The fact that Celebi did go down so early meant that Milotic, along with the Donphan, which I believe was still around, was just such a pain for Twit to try and deal with. Kieran Black was not able to come in too freely, so that's a really good thing that Mo did in the game, was that he was able to apply offensive pressure, not allowing Kieran Black to come in safely, even with rocks up. If Kieran Black had switched in freely more often, it could have been a little bit more detrimental to Mo in the game. And I want to point out that horrible misplay with Nidoking late game. Once that Nidoking went down, the match should have been over for Mo. He should have just lost right then and there, because Twit could have saved Rhydon. Then Rhydon in the back beats Zardex 1v1. Scizor and Kieran Black can deal with the Mew well enough. But no, for some reason, Mo decided to switch in Mo decided to switch in Nidoking on the Rhydon, as Rhydon went for the Earthquake and Nidoking goes down. Mo really got bailed out by the fact that Twit did not have a Scarfer this game, because if Twit had a Scarfer, then Twit still would have had a good chance to win. And I really just don't think he should have made that Nidoking switch. Like, you still could have stayed in with Mew. Zardex could have also potentially switched in if he had felt risky enough to do that, but Mew should have just stayed in instead of him trying to predict something, I suppose, and bring in the Nidoking as aggressively as he did. So while I think that, I guess Twit might have played this game a little better, I guess, it's just the end game is what really has me just kind of focused on it, because of just how differently and like how many scenarios could have happened and how just things would have gone in a different way. Moving on to number 2 here, we have Nexus, coach of the Pittsburgh Pichus. So this match, from, I almost want to say from like beginning to end, was just very, very poorly played by Nexus. If you rewatch the battle, there is many instances where he just completely overpredicts, or he doesn't make the necessary play that he has to. And I feel like Nexus is probably the most well-versed player in the league. This season, he's one of the most experienced players in the league. And this match was just a good example of, there's going to be those games where you misplay like that, where you mispredict like that. And this happened to Nappy, I think back in like week 3, which funny enough, this happened to Nappy against Nick as well. So I don't know if Nick just has that effect on well-versed players or something, or maybe they're just expecting him to not be as aggressive as he is. But this is where Nexus definitely was not on his A game. He was not entirely focused in the battle, and it showed very obviously. One big thing about this match too was that when he decided to bring in the Zygarde on, I believe, the Roserade, if I'm not mistaken, if he had gone for Substitute as opposed to going for Thousand Arrows, then I think that definitely would have benefited him a lot in this match. It would have allowed him to try and wear down Nick's team, or potentially he could have not only just KO'd Nappy, he might have been able to actually get a second KO as well. Because the thing about it is that Nick's draft has no real ground switching. So that means Zydog, if it was choice banded, legitimately just came in and 2 KO'd every single Pokemon that Nick had. And at that point in the game, Nick's Nappy was super low, so he's obviously not going to switch in something like Mienshao or Celesteela on a possible choice banded Zydog. So that's where I think Nexus really should have taken advantage of that and gone for the substitute. And then from there, he might have been able to coil, or he might have been able to 1,000 arrows, something to pick up 2 KOs instead of just the KO on Nappy on the first initial 1,000 arrows. And that might have been able to switch things a little bit into his favor. Also, when he didn't bring Lopunny while the electric terrain was up, I think that was also another bad play, because Nick's Mienshao was locked into knockoff, so Lopunny could have just come in, Mega Evolved very freely, and clicked Thunder Punch on a potentially incoming Celesteela in electric terrain, which does about like 40-ish%. Then you factor in the 12% from the Stealth Rocks. If electric terrain had still been up for another turn or two, he might have actually been able to 2 KO the Celesteela potentially, or just got off a huge amount of damage to then be able to beat it a lot easier later in the match. Early on in the game against the Nappy, I feel like he definitely could have been a bit more aggressive with the mons that he had in the back towards that Nappy, because Nappy is either going to stay in and go for Tail Glow in hopes that its opponent switches out, or it's going to stay in and just try to go for an offensive move. He could have been aggressive and potentially brought in the Tapu Koko as opposed to trying to leave in the Crocodile, because once Crocodile got weakened and Crocodile got worn down, it was basically very hard for him to try and deal with the Arcanine at that point. Like, yeah, he still had Suicune, but Suicune was tailor-made to try and wear down his team over time. It wasn't really made to switch in to potential wild charges. Or something that did happen as well was that Nexus switched in Suicune on a high jump kick from the Mienshao. Even though, yes, I guess the Uxie switch-in would have been a little bit too obvious, I still feel like it might have been his better play in the long run, and that just kind of added more towards the mispredicting that Nexus did throughout the battle. And then the end game, he might have still been able to win even after Latios went for a Dragon Dance if he was aggressive and switched in Tapu Koko on the what's it called? The Zen Headbutt, I think is what he went for, because there's no way the Tapu Koko was going to get one shot by a +1 hit, and I don't think a +1 Earthquake one-shot Lopunny either, so he shouldn't have been fearing the Earthquake. And if he had made the aggressive play into Koko on the +1 Latios' attack, he then would have been able to outspeed it, knock it out with Dazzling Gleam, or if he expected Nick to switch into the Roserade, he could have U-turned out into Lopunny as the Roserade came in, and then at that point Lopunny just wins the battle on its own. So yeah, there was just a lot of things that Nexus kind of did wrong this match, and I still don't feel like he should have dropped entirely too low, just because Mo still kind of misplayed his way near the end of his battle, and he wasn't really that into the game, or he wasn't really too confident in himself throughout the battle. At least Nexus was able to maintain some kind of confidence, and ultimately he still had a chance to win at the end, and it wasn't just a cop-out win for him, which is, I guess, how Mo ultimately ended up winning. So yeah, either way though, at this point we know who's number one, and that is going to be Nick. Honestly, there's not really too much I have to say about Nick and the Chicago Buffalons here, Mr. Sacred Fire Negro, and the main reason is just that he played to the best of his abilities throughout this match. He played how he should have played, and it was more Nexus just kind of misplaying and mispredicting almost the entire time. I do have to say though that Nick was very aggressive, like needlessly aggressive, honestly, and I feel like that's something that's going to end up hurting him ultimately in the long run. Like, don't get me wrong, being aggressive isn't bad, but being aggressive at times can become predictable, and if you don't know when to try to switch out, or if you don't know when you should have your walls in, or when you shouldn't jump the gun on stuff, that's ultimately going to end up hindering you in the long run of a potential battle. And it's a good thing that it didn't happen in this game, because him being so aggressive ultimately is what I think really helped him out. Plus, Celesteela was an absolute beast in this match. We saw it last week. Just put in so much work offensively wise, and in this match defensively wise, it was an absolute monster. So I do like the fact that he's using Celesteela so well. Another thing is that I really wish he would double check his sets, like he would look over his sets, because he said that he didn't realize he had Surf over Scold, and I think that's just kind of being a little bit ignorant, because you should be able to know what your sets have. I would recommend at least maybe sitting down for a minute and just kind of like shifting through all the sets, looking through all the sets, maybe like double checking the EVs and stuff, because he may be in a scenario where he thinks he has one move that's gonna win him the game, and then ultimately he doesn't have that move, or he's gonna be in the position of where he's gonna get swept if he doesn't have this move. And he may think he has the move, but then he doesn't have the move and then he loses. Or he may think Amon has this spread when it actually has this spread, and that costs him the battle. So I really just, please sit down and look over your sets, man, please. Yeah, I was like, what, dude? Like, you don't know your own sets, my man? Like, I know it's probably the front office. Like, I think front offices are fine for draft leagues, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you shouldn't just needlessly or ultimately like 100% rely on the judgment or the sets or EVs of your front office. You should be able to understand why something has this move or why it doesn't have that move, and why this EV spread is like this and not like that. And that's where I think, again, like just kind of sit down for a minute or two and just kind of look over the sets, look over the EV spreads and the moves, and everything will be fine. But for the most part, I think Nick played his half of the match well. Again, he was a little bit aggressive, but well, he was a little bit too aggressive, but ultimately it didn't end up mattering too much. So yeah, that is going to be the week 5 power rankings for UCL Season 3. Of course, if you guys do enjoy the video, make sure to hammer on that thumbs up button down below. As always, let me know in the comment section below what was your favorite match of this week, and or what was your own ranking. So let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, I will see you all next week on Monday for sure. So later, everybody.
No matter where you're at, I'm not here to make friends, it's time to attack and deplete your HP with a final smash. Don't make me turn around and pull a 6-foot hacks. 6 foot hacks, hacks. Yeah. 6 foot hacks.